everyone, I am Ryu.
And today I'm going to be covering an article from TechCrunch on Australia's dangerous anti-encryption bill. Now, without further ado, let's begin. Australia's controversial anti-encryption bill is one step closer to becoming law, after the two leading but sparring party political giants struck a deal to pass the legislation. The bill, in short, grants Australian police greater powers to issue technical notices, a nice way of forcing companies, even websites operating in Australia, to help the government hack, implement malware, undermine encryption, or insert backdoors at the behest of the government. If companies refuse, they could face financial penalties. Lawmakers say that the law is only meant to target serious criminals, sex offenders, terrorists, homicide, and drug offenses. Critics have pointed out that the law could allow mission creep into less serious offenses, such as copyright infringement, despite promises that the compelled assistance requests are signed off by two senior government officials. In all, the proposed provisions have been widely panned by experts who argue that the bill is vague and contradictory, but powerful, and still contains dangerous loopholes, and opponents warn, as they have for years, that any technical backdoors that allow the government to access end-to-end encryption messages could be exploited by hackers. But that's unlikely to get in the way of the bill's near inevitable passing. Australia's ruling coalition government and its opposition Labour Party agreed to have the bill put before Parliament this week before its summer break. Several lawmakers look set to reject the bill, criticizing the government's effort to rush the bill before the holiday. Far from being a national security measure, this bill will have the unintended consequence of diminishing the online safety, security, and privacy of every single Australian, said Jordan Steele-John, a Green senator, in a tweet. Tim Watts, a Labour member of Parliament for Gellibrand, tweeted a long thread slamming the government's push to get the legislation passed before Christmas, despite more than 15,000 submissions to a public consultation largely decrying the bill's content. The tech community, arguably the most affected by the bill's passing, also slammed the bill. Apple called it dangerously ambiguous, while Cisco and Mozilla joined a chorus of other tech firms calling for the government to dial back the provisions. But the rhetoric isn't likely to dampen the rush by the Global Surveillance Pact. The US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, known as the so-called Five Eyes groups of nations, to push for greater access to encrypted data. Only earlier this year, the governmental coalition said in no uncertain terms that it would force backdoors if companies weren't willing to help their government spy. Of the Five Eyes, the UK was the first with its 2016 ratified Investigatory Powers Act, a controversial law that critics dubbed the Snoopers Charter. The European Court of Human Rights later found that parts of the surveillance powers violated human rights laws, including obtaining communications data directly from providers. Near identical powers proposed by Australia's draft bill, much in the UK's shadows, however, aren't covered under European law and are likely to escape any international legal challenges. Australia is likely to pass the bill, but when exactly remains a mystery. The coalition government has to call an election in less than 6 months, putting the anti-encryption law on a timer. Now, I really don't think this is going to work, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, they would have to regulate virtually all forms of technology from proxies to VPNs, basically anything that could work around this type of law, and they would have to adopt China levels of censorship for this to even be possible. Number two, you are just not going to get open source software companies to go along with this. And even if you could, they're open source companies, meaning people can go in, look at the source code, and patch it themselves, or build their own variant of that software where those security flaws don't exist. And number three, they want to force companies to build security holes in operating systems. Who's to say this won't be abused by other countries like China, Japan, the United States? We've already had whistleblowers show the massive surveillance that is done by our governments, and your response is, yeah, let's make our devices that are already being tapped into less secure. To me, the reason why this bill was even floated around as an idea, it really didn't have anything to do with catching bad guys, who use encrypted software to send messages back and forth. It's already been shown time and time again that these law enforcement agencies have the tools to do it. This law is basically a matter of convenience. It's the cops don't really want to put in the time to actually have to crack into a bad person's phone. It's all a matter of, well, we just can't be bothered. I personally agree with the article. This is a dangerous notion and sets a very dangerous precedence that could affect software not just in Australia but around the globe. And the idea that this could even be passed is absolutely frightening to me and should worry people. Alright everyone, that's my rant for today. If you liked what you heard, like, share, subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day.